The journey to the cabin was a microcosm of what my relationship with my father had become. Long stretches of uncomfortable silences, interspersed with awkward attempts at small talk. It had been that way ever since Mum's death. Dad had retreated into his shell, only popping out every once in a while to engage in superficial conversations, almost as if he was doing it just to confirm that I was still alive, before darting back into his cocoon. Back to a world of dreams, of happy memories, of warm summers and cold ice cream, a world where Mum was still alive and hadn't taken all the colour and joy in the world with her when she passed. Things had gotten worse in the weeks leading up to my 13th birthday. Dad seemed more tense, more fidgety, jumping at the smallest of sounds, beads of sweat permanently resting on his greying brow. He'd been spending more and more time holed up in his study, only shuffling out to grab his meals. Back then, I believed it was because we were coming up on my first birthday without her, and he didn't think he could handle it. Didn't want me to see him break down again like he did at her funeral, throwing himself at her coffin and crying hysterically as he scratched the varnished wood until blood ran from his fingers. He couldn't deal with the fact that he came out relatively unscathed from the accident that killed Mum. That's why I wasn't surprised when he suggested driving down to the family cabin for my birthday. He needed a break. We needed a break. "It'll be good for us," he said, giving me a nervous smile. "To get away from it all. Put all this behind us, at least for a while." I nodded and told him that I'd like that. Little did I know that at the time he wouldn't be telling me the real reason why we were going there. That it wasn't just Mum's death that had him so disturbed. That things were about to take such a terrifying turn, they would leave an indelible mark on my soul. It was a cold, dark day. The sky swirled with swollen grey clouds that blotted out the sun, threatening to burst any second. The woods made everything darker around us, growing thicker as we got closer to the cabin, crowding around the overgrown dirt track like they wanted to swallow up the path. But despite the weather, despite the thick forest canopy and the thorny branches that whipped and slashed at the windshield, Dad seemed to get less and less stressed as we approached the cabin. It was like the muted greenery of the verdure was washing away the creases on his forehead. Why exactly was he looking so forward to going to the cabin? There was practically a smile tugging at his lips when we reached the small clearing where the cabin rested at the edge of the lake. It was an old two-story thing, built with solid wood that had stood the test of time. Broad windows adorned the stained wooden walls, and strategically placed CCTV cameras winked at visitors from cornices above a porch that wrapped around the house, before extending onto a small pier at the back where Uncle Barney had docked his fishing boat. Speaking of the man, he was waiting for us outside the cabin, standing with a grin on his bearded face next to a hastily constructed barbed wire fence that seemed to form a semicircle around the house, before ending at the lip of the lake. I frowned. There were no gaps in the fence to let anyone in or out. Almost like it was designed to act as a thorny cage. It was another sign of something being unusually off about this trip. Before I could say anything, though, Dad pulled the car up next to the fence, kicking up a small cloud of dust in the process. "Come on, honey," he said, and jumped out of the car after grabbing our luggage from the back seat. I climbed out after him and walked around the car to see Uncle Barney helping Dad hop over the fence before pulling him in for a hug. "Good to see you, man," Dad said, before poking his brother's belly. "Damn, it's only been a couple of months since we last saw you, and you've already gotten fatter." Uncle Barney laughed his rich, throaty laughter. one that instantly puts your heart at ease. You know how it is, Freddy. Emily treats me too well. I smiled. I could see what Dad was talking about. Uncle Barney had always been a barrel-chested man, but now the barrel was beginning to sag, making his tummy bulge a little. I reckon I could finally take you in a fight now, Dad quipped, earning a chuckle from Uncle Barney. Nuh-uh, you're still not quite there yet, little brother. Hey, Uncle Barney, I greeted him with a wave before stuffing my hand back in my pocket of my sweatshirt. Well, hello, Kira. And how's my freckled little tigress doing today? Good. So, what's with the fence? I blurted out the question that had been gnawing at me like a pebble stuck in a shoe. His face darkened, and he turned and glared at Dad. You haven't told her yet? My father guiltily averted his gaze. Told me what? I asked, my heart starting to beat a little faster. Uncle Barney quickly caught himself and smiled at me again. Told you just how beautiful you've gotten. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Now, come on in. We'll talk inside. I knew that I wasn't going to get any answers that easily from either of them, so chose to shut up and do as I was told. They pulled the wires apart, creating enough space for me to slip in, and we strode into the cabin as the sky found a way to become even darker than it had been moments ago. The rain started soon after we entered the house, and I could see raindrops pattering on the dull grey surface of the lake through the sliding glass doors that led to the pier. Uncle Barney's boat was bobbing on the water, glistening happily under the shower while the sky grumbled with a barely suppressed rage. I carried my stuff up to my room, threw it on the bed and rushed back downstairs after quickly freshening up, ready to unravel the mysteries surrounding this trip. Dad and Uncle Barney had been arguing in my absence about why I was still being kept in the dark when the appropriate time would be, or was, to reveal everything to me. I only caught faint snippets of their conversation, as they quickly shut up when they spotted me coming down the stairs, the storm having muffled my footsteps. I poked and prodded, begged them to tell me what was going on, but they refused. All in good time, Dad said, after shooting Uncle Barney a sharp look. Whatever it wasn't good. They tried to stay stone-faced, but I could tell they were nervous. Even Uncle Barney looked shooken, and that really scared me. Then it got, well, weird. I watched as Dad and Uncle Barney pulled out long sheets of white cloth from a bag placed on the couch in front of the fireplace and went outside in the rain. Now these sheets weren't pure white. They had black Arabic writing painted on them, each and every single one of them. I tried asking them what they were doing, but they didn't answer. All in good time, Dad repeated. Just trust us. Boots plopping in and out of the mud, they went out and tied these sheets of cloth to the barbed wire before rushing back inside, the unrelenting rain lashing them mercilessly. I was really confused at this point. We are not a religious family. We're not superstitious, and we're certainly not Muslims. So what in the world was happening here? And it didn't end there. Drenched to the bone with water dripping down their clothes and onto the hardwood floor, they retrieved a hefty-looking tree stump from Uncle Barney's room, hobbled out the front door, and placed it within the barbed wire perimeter. This stump, too, had Arab writing painstakingly carved onto it. Once again, they brushed aside my questions and concerns and proceeded to change into dry clothes before coming back down to start heating up some burgers, like I hadn't seen them do the most inexplicable things imaginable. While the sky still sulked, the rain had petered out by the time we wolfed down our lunch, so they took me out for some shooting practice. Uncle Barney disappeared down into the basement, and came back up carrying a bag full of weapons and laid them out on the coffee table. Pistols, hunting rifles, shotguns, scoped ARs. It was like he was preparing for war. It looked like he wanted to tell me more about what was happening here, but Dad shut him down again. I could see entire arguments playing out between them, simply by the way they were looking at each other. A slight shake of the head, an exasperated sigh. Little things that communicated so much, but none of it told me what I now so desperately wanted to know. I took out my frustration on the empty beer cans, rapidly emptying a whole magazine of the Glock that was given to me. Uncle Barney whistled at my aim, and Dad remarked that all the practice we had done was finally starting to pay off. I beamed at the compliments before I went over his remark again and realized that there was something different about this target practice, something a bit more serious. The rest of the day was the same. A strange tension clogged in the air in the cabin. The secrets were setting my nerves on edge. I wanted to scream, to shout, to cry, but kept it all bottled up like my grief at Mum's death. I even gracefully accepted the medallion my father gave to me. A gold coin with Arabic phrases etched all over it. Wore it around my neck and swore on Mum's grave to never take it off, even as 1,000 questions swirled around in my head like a maelstrom. Thankfully, or maybe not so much, I got my answers after dinner. Wood crackled with a soft hiss in the fireplace as Dad sat me down on the couch in front of it. Uncle Barney stood off to the side with fear and worry etched on his face. Dad took my hands in his and attempted to smile. It was gruesome. "So?" I whispered, afraid of breaking the spell. "Are you guys going to tell me what's going on?" "Kara," Dad began, "you know I love you, right?" I nodded. "And you know your mother loved you as well?" "Yeah." "She loved you deeply, more than anything in this world. I want you to keep that in mind when you've heard what I have to say, okay?" I nodded again. "Now, I'm sure you're aware that your mother had a very difficult childhood," he continued. "She was orphaned very young, was thrown into the foster system, where she went through things that no human being should ever have to go through." I felt the heat from the fire wash over my face, the medallion cold against my chest as Dad's grip on my hands tightened. She developed a cocaine addiction in her early 20s and was on the verge of being driven homeless. I gulped. I had heard about this just last year. But then she put her life together, bit by bit, piece by piece, crawling out of the hell she had fallen into, before meeting me and doing me the honor of building a life with her. Dad blinked, and teardrops fell down his cheeks. Uncle Barney squeezed his shoulder, reassuringly, and he began speaking again. "Well, honey, there's something missing from this story. Something we didn't tell you about. Something we lied to you about. You see, much as she lectured you, it wasn't hard work that helped her get back on track. It was something else. Now this is going to sound unbelievable, and it did to me too, until I saw the evidence with my own eyes. Your mother was going to kill herself." I gasped. "Yeah, she felt like she was at the end of her rope. Felt like there was nothing left living for, and just wanted to end it all. So she drove down to the nearest bridge and prepared to jump down to the swirling depths below. She was standing at the edge, holding on by the railing, when she was stopped by a man, a complete stranger. one she swore appeared out of nowhere. She said there was something hypnotic, something otherworldly about this man, and before she knew it, she had backed away from the edge and began telling him about her life and why she was choosing to end it. Now this man, and this is where it gets strange, so stay with me. This man offered to fix everything for her. He told her he'll give her a gift, love, happiness, the life she'd always wanted. All she had to do was reach forward and take his hand. And she took it, and the rest is, as they say, history. Only there was a catch, Uncle Barney added. Dad glanced at him and then looked back at me. Right. The man wanted something from her, something that your mother, being as cynically hopeless as she was more than happy to give. What? I asked. Dad's voice began to crack. Her firstborn child, to be collected on their 13th birthday. You. I shook my hands free. This isn't funny, Dad. How dare you make a joke of this? Soul-crushing sadness flashed across his face. I'm not joking, honey. I would never joke about something like that. I know what it sounds like. I reacted just like you when your mom told me about this. But I believed it when I saw it for myself. Had to. What do you mean? She couldn't give you up. Loved you far too much to do that. She tried to break her promise, tried to fight it, and the man really hated that. What are you saying, Dad? I yelled. Kara, honey, your mother didn't die in a car accident.